And we're ready whenever you are, Mayor.
Good evening, and thank you for attending tonight's City Council meeting. For those who are attending remotely, the camera in council chambers is set up to show those attending in person tonight. The platform we are using has a raise hand feature. You will notice a picture of a hand in the upper right-hand corner. When we reach the point in the meeting where the public has the opportunity to address council, you can click that button to be given your opportunity to address council. Before we stand for the pledge, just a note that following the pledge, I'd like to have a moment of silence for retired City Judge Bill Small and for retired longtime firefighter Dick Brennan, both of whom passed since our last meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Tulley,
Here.
Councilor Selly,
Here.
Councilor Powers,
Here.
Councilor Scamperly,
Here.
Councilor Stevenson, here, Councilor Trim, Councilor Weaver,
Here.
Quorum present.
Thank you. And just a note that Councilor Trim indicated she would try to be here by 6:15. She had a meeting prior to tonight. We don't have any presentations tonight, so we'll begin with public hearings. We have 3 public hearings tonight. The first is regarding a resolution to adopt the 2025 preliminary budget, and I will open that public hearing now. It is going to be bill number 88. If anyone attending in person would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please come down to the podium and you will have 5 minutes to speak.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ryan Polniak. I'm a sergeant with the Ogdensburg Police Department, and I'm assigned as a school resource officer at OFA. I'm also the police supervisor union president. I've had the privilege to serve the citizens of Ogdensburg for the last 14 years in my capacity as a police officer. I'm here to speak on behalf of our department supervisors in regards to Chief Kern's request for a 5th officer. Between 2020 and 2022, I watched the city police force, my friends, my colleagues, shrink from 29 to 18. I've watched my friends and colleagues work endless hours to cover overtime, special details, call-ins, and traumatic events to ensure that the citizens of Ogdensburg sleep peacefully at night. We spent 4 years digging our heels in and doing more with less. We were told over those 4 years that this was the new era and that this was the future. I don't believe that the new era created has done anything more than turn this police agency that was once the pinnacle of St. Lawrence County into a reactive police department. Currently, our police department road patrol officers have 2 members with more than 6 years on, both of which have less than 10. The rest of our road patrol officers have less than 4 years on the job. We have pled and spoke about retention issues and trying to keep officers. I can assure you giving us a 5th position will assist in doing just that. That 5th position is that good faith, that help, that light for us knowing help is on the way, and that all of our grinding and making things work wasn't all for nothing. Since becoming a police officer, I've upheld the oath to protect and serve the citizens of Ogdensburg, regardless of what the call may be. Just last week, I was in a foot pursuit with a subject who was armed with several different weapons, of which he attempted to use towards myself and school staff. Thankfully, he ended with him in custody, not with one of us being seriously injured or worse. I mention this because I was alone, and when I called for backup, of the 2 officers that are assigned to our shifts, 1 was able to come and assist. The 2nd officer was on another call, and other calls were lining up. That's what we're working with right now. Our backup is no longer a minute away. Our backup is no longer several officers to serve our community. It's 2 officers on the shift at any given time. Now, I'm not here to tell any sob stories. I'm here to tell you of just one incident that has occurred in our city. And this one incident isn't just an isolated incident. Incidents like these occur more often than most people ever know. We need more officers. We need more positions. Giving us the 5th hire is not a complete saving grace, but it is the building blocks we need to turn our department around. By continuously pushing off hiring additional officers, we're setting this department back in experience and seniority. Given our current status of hiring new officers, They need to have 2 years on for any specialty trainings. That includes being a field training officer for new officers. They need 4 years on in order to be an officer in charge, which gives them the opportunity to run a shift in the absence of a sergeant or a supervisor. They also need 4 years in order to take any promotional exams. By pushing our hires down the road, we're not just affecting the workforce now, we're affecting the workforce in the future by not having eligible candidates to fill our positions of supervisors and not having seniority to mold future officers. We cannot continue to drop hiring and filling vacancies as they come up. That does nothing short of stifle our experience and our morale even further. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Follmiak. Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please use the raise hand feature in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and you will have 5 minutes to speak.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
Okay, with that, I declare this public hearing closed. The next public hearing is regarding a local law to allow for the changes in the Ogdensburg Municipal Code, Section 177, entitled Sewer Rates, as dictated by the adoption of the 2025 budget. I will open that public hearing now. It is going to be bill number 89. If anyone attending in person would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please come down to the podium and you will have 5 minutes to speak. If anyone attending remotely would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please use the raise hand feature in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and you will have 5 minutes to speak.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
So I declare this public hearing closed. The last public hearing is regarding a local law to allow for the changes in the Ogdensburg Municipal Code, Section 215, Sections 39, 40, and 41, entitled Water Rates, as dictated by the adoption of the 2025 budget. I will open that public hearing now. It is going to be bill number 90. If anyone attending in person would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please come down to the podium and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. If anyone attending remotely would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please use the raised hand feature in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and you will have 5 minutes to speak.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
So I declare this public hearing closed. That brings us to personal appearance. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you will have 5 minutes. If anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raise hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute one person at a time, and you will have 5 minutes.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
So that brings us to correspondence, and I believe we have 2 letters tonight.
Yes, sir. Village, Town of Hubleton, and City of Ogdensburg board members and mayors. On August 29th, 2024, I spoke with Rebecca Donnelly, village clerk, and issued a verbal complaint about the sewer gas smell due to your sewer release valve located on my property at 5405 State Highway 812. Until the recent elevated situation, no one from your office has contacted me. I also spoke with the St. Lawrence County Public Health Office, Bradley Johnson, who advised me to contact the Department of Conservation. He also stated that he will file a formal complaint with the City of Ogdensburg DPW and the Town of Hubleton DPW if it is within his jurisdiction. I contacted the EC, Jackie Smith Ganya, who informed me she would reach out and contact the entities involved and the engineer of the project. It should be noted that as of the date of this letter, no effective measures have been taken to eliminate the hazardous sewer gas that is spewing into my home and property. It has affected my quality of life by not allowing me and my family to enjoy the simple pleasures like being outside or even inside my home. My kids and grandchildren stay away from my home due to the smell alone. On October 22nd, 2024, I noticed workers near the valve located on my property. Only during my personal investigation did one of the workers inform me of a raw sewage spill that leaked onto my property. I again contacted the DEC. Ms. Ganya met me at my property on October 23rd, 2024 to view the damage. She informed me that when I initially contacted the DEC, a formal complaint is on file. Ms. Ganya and myself were informed that the engineer of the project was en route to assess the damages. It should be noted that as of the date of this letter, the engineer has not spoken to me. I spoke with the workers and they stated that the engineer never came out to my property. Please inform me as to your guarantee that these issues are resolved, future issues will not happen ever again, and what you actually did to resolve the hazardous situation, such as contaminated soil and toxic sewer gas. Soil tests should be done on my property to ensure all contaminants were removed and the topsoil is replaced. Gas meters and monitors should be installed at or near every exhaust valve located along your sewer line. If dangerous levels of gases are detected, immediate notification to residents should be in place. I will expect a reply within 30 days of the date of this letter. Furthermore, I contacted the assessor for the village of Hubleton and was informed my assessment will not change even though I have the above listed grievances. Please inform me as to why my assessment has not been lowered and they actually were raised this year. If your answer to this question is that I built a new building, I invite you to hold your next town board meeting at my building when the sewer gas is spewing from your valve. Also, please inform me as to your future plans of informing a home/property owner when your raw sewage spews onto their property. Future litigation may arise. Please contact me by the above address or by phone. Sincerely, Paul Barr. Our next letter, dear Mayor Tully and Council, in other years, this is a time when we would be addressing you with a request for funding as an outside agency. Though it is not something that is appropriate at this time, we still felt it was a good time to be in touch to let you know what we have done over the past year and what we intend to do in 2025 to serve the residents of and visitors to the city of Ogdensburg. Gardening is our passion and pleasure, and we are pleased to share our time and resources to help beautify the community in which we live. Our Maple Leaf Awards to others in the city who share a love of gardening and beautifying the space they have is one of our favorite programs, and we thank you for allowing us to make those presentations at the City Council meeting. During 2024, we planted and maintained gardens in Library Park, the Agawam Garden by the Dubisky Center, the gardens at the Remington Kids Place, the Arterial Garden just outside the city limits on Route 37 towards Morristown, and 2 small gardens on Ford Street near Proctor Ave. We have worked with local businesses and BOCES to provide hanging baskets on Ford and State Streets, as well as planters in front of City Hall and the post office. The canoe at the intersection of Green and State Streets, filled with flowers in the summer and now with mums and pumpkins to celebrate autumn, is a newer addition. We have appreciated the work and cooperation of the Ogdensburg DPW in hanging, watering, and taking down the hanging baskets and planters. They have also graciously stored the canoe and bring it out each spring for us to fill. Without this participation on the part of the city of Ogdensburg, we would not be able to keep this project going. We've also been pleased to share many of our Library Park garden perennials with the city in its replanting and redesigning of the garden spaces surrounding the Dubisky Center. This is a win-win proposition for all. Lastly, there's our Youth Garden Club, which has had a great year with 30 young people and 10 adults participating. Hopefully, some of these young gardeners will carry on the spirit of community service and share their skills wherever they settle as adults. We hope to see many of you throughout the year as we celebrate our 100th anniversary. Sincerely, Lynn Griffith, Ogdensburg Garden Club President.
Thank you. Next, we have our consent agenda that the claims is enumerated in General Fund Warrant 21-2024 in the amount of $489,830.30, and Library Warrant number 21-2024 in the amount of $0, and Capital Fund Warrant number 21-2024 in the amount of $154,737.42, and Community Development Fund Warrant number 21-2024 in the amount of $0, and Community Renewal Fund Warrant number 21-2024 in the amount of $0 as audited, be and the same hereby are ordered paid. I so move.
Second.
Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Councilor Selly,
Yes.
Councilor Powers,
Yes.
Councilor Scamperly,
Yes.
Councilor Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilor Weaver,
Yes.
approved.
We do not have any appointments tonight, so that brings us to items for council action. Our first item of business is an ordinance amending Chapter 215 entitled Water of the Code of the City of Ogdensburg that was tabled at the October 28, 2024 meeting. Would someone like to make a motion to take this item off the table?
I'll motion that, Mayor.
I'll second that.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Councilor Selly,
Yes.
Councilor Powers,
Yes.
Councilor Scamperly,
Yes.
Councilor Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilor Weaver,
Yes.
approved.
Any discussion on this resolution?
I will just reiterate that I think that this is too subjective. I don't know how we're going to manage regularly used. That's an opinion. It is not a definite. So I still feel that although we've been belaboring this since March, I still think that this is not the answer.
Anyone else?
Yes, I think the definition is a nicer cleanup. I agree that it's not perfect. Jen is on the money with that, I believe. There is some vague language here that could be cleaned up, but I think it's better than what we had. And there's not a rate here. Are we voting on the rate with this or no?
The resolution calls for changing the language to indicate that each commercial or office unit is treated as a separate unit for billing purposes at the metered billing rate for the appropriate meter size. And that was determined to be 3/4 inch, right?
It depends on the line coming in. Most of them are 3/4 inch.
Right. So that being said, so if somebody has a business in their home, just to clarify, like a daycare or something where they have customers or a hair shop or something, basically they're going to be charged one bill, not two, right? For the flat rate,
They'll pay the quarterly meter rate.
quarterly meter
Yeah,
rate.
and that's a flat rate. We will not ask them to install the meter, so we won't measure the water usage. Chances are they, from what I understand, most of them don't go over those minimum gallons. So that is not a point of contention here. It's the meter rate.
Right. And I understand, I've seen letters from people suggesting to double the rate, which I disagree with completely. And I know this is a compromise. Personally, I think I don't think they're going over the commercial rate. And as I've said several times, I don't like charging them the same as a commercial business. I thought the Snyders made a fair proposal that met 50%, halfway, the midpoint between the residential flat rate and the commercial flat rate. I think that was fair, and I think that was a fair offer. And so that's the only language I would like to see changed. And I'm not sure if staff came up with language associated with the Snyder proposal, but I thought something to the effect of the midway point or the midway charge between the residential flat fee and the metered flat rate. I think they don't have the same advantage as being in a commercial district. And yet at the same time, if they are using more water, which again, we just don't know, the charge is modest. It's certainly not double. It's around, at current rate, it would be around $160 a year, which I think is plenty until we get meters. And so I'd like to see a proposal, or I'd like to propose that we amend that to be the midway point between the residential flat rate and the metered flat rate. If council, or excuse me, if staff has a better language to do that I would say let's use that language. But, so I'm going to propose that amendment. Whether anybody wants to second it, that's fine.
Are you making a resolution?
What exactly is the amendment?
So to change the basically the language of, instead of paying the commercial metered fee, it would be the midway point between the residential flat fee and the metered flat fee, which was basically what the Snyders threw at us as what they felt was a decent compromise. I think it is too. They're not a commercial business in a commercial zone, yet there's a possibility they're using more water. And so I think that's a fair way to do this myself.
So you're making that in the form of a motion, Councilor Scamperly?
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
I actually want to discuss this aspect of it. I don't. I can second Councilor Scamperly's amendment. My genuine concern here is, let's call it an upstart business, a new home-based business that starts. We don't know, we're going to be hitting them with a potential commercial rate, and they may not have a 3/4 inch line coming into their home. Where's the, it might be pennies over the dollar, or it might be pennies over the grand scheme of things, but it just doesn't sit with me from that aspect, not knowing what we're dealing with, whether it be an upstart or it be the Snyder's business or a home daycare, if they've got a 1/2 inch line coming in opposed to a 3/4 inch, or if it was metered. Meters, I don't even know why we talk about meters, quite frankly. We're not going to have any meters anytime soon. Not right, but ultimately, I mean, that's my genuine concern is to how we balance that fairly. Because I fear that's what's going to come next without actually codifying this, which I appreciate the work that's gone into it. I could almost accept this as it is, but I am hung on that one small little aspect that could come back, and before you know it, we're dealing with this in a whole nother manner. But I can second Councilor Scamperly's amendment.
My recollection, and I don't have the piece of paper with me, and I apologize for that. I just got in from Boston about 45 minutes ago for my meetings. I thought that it was 1.5 times the residential rate that had been being proposed. Previous, it was always the midpoint between commercial and residential by the Snyders.
Yes.
Okay, my apologies that I misunderstood that.
It's 50% of the metered rate, 50% of the flat rate residential.
Okay, thank you. I still don't know how we're gonna, I don't know how we're gonna enforce it, because when you say regularly, if I have a client come to my home once a week, is that regularly? Do I have to have somebody come 5 times a week? Is that regularly? I don't know how we're gonna do that. I just don't know how we're gonna ask codes to enforce that. It's too subjective, and it leaves the door open for favoritism or the appearance of favoritism, and the perception of the public is what's important. And I do have a problem with not a clear direction with that. I have a very big problem with that. I can't support it with that vague a comment in there.
Thank you. Other comments?
So do you support eliminating it altogether?
No, I don't.
Because if we don't do this, then you stick with the double rate.
No, we need to do something. I just think that we have to say it's either a business or it isn't, not regularly. It has to be just either a business or not, but we're talking about the amendment right now.
Right. I support the language, but the rate is what I'm suggesting to be the midpoint between the residential flat rate and the metered rate, which is what the Snyders proposed.
I just think we're going back to the same thing we had a few years ago with brush piles. A big pile, we're only going to enforce it when it's a big pile, but not a small pile. That's subjective. This is the same thing regularly. If I disperse, if everyone came to my house in the morning that works for me, then I disperse them between 8 and 8:30, but I only do it once a day. Is that regularly? I don't know what the word regularly is going, how we're going to deal with that. I just don't like that word. I don't know how we're going to do that and how we're going to hold anyone accountable with that. Do you have any clarification on that?
When speaking with management, and as I'm thinking about this and doing my own research on language, we're kind of in our own boat here. Most communities are not looking at a home business in the sense that we're looking at it, and dealing with the water rates and the sewer rates. They're more concerned with what that means for business licensing and those types of things. The language is the way it is because we need to be able to interpret different circumstances. And I understand what you're saying, the language is vague. But if you look at it from the other side of the coin, the language allows for an interpretation based on different circumstances and situations. And management needs that because not everything is cookie cutter. And without some latitude one way or the other, we get into a position where we can't make good judgment calls. And think about what the code said and a certain refund that I was not allowed to give because the code was very specific. And so we try to avoid those circumstances because not everything is black and white. There's so much gray. And I think it's important to have some of that gray to be able to make interpretations in certain circumstances. And for every circumstance in a scenario that we come up with, one way, we can certainly imagine one the other way. But we have to be able to look at the real world and what the circumstances come in, ask our questions, figure things out. And make a determination. That's why you pay management and staff to make those determinations. And that's why you pay a city manager to oversee those to make sure that there isn't favoritism and make sure that it's being implemented in a fair and equitable way. This issue came about because of equity. We need to continue that. And I think plenty of compromises have been made. Management stands by the language and stays by the rate it's been that it's put in here. Council can change via amendment, and obviously management will execute whatever council decides.
Well, I guess I'll comment to that, and I would never want and never try to micromanage our city, but I will tell you part of the reason we're in this is because of lack of regular enforcement and lack of fair enforcement, or equitable, I shouldn't say fair, equitable enforcement, consistent enforcement. So I think this is better than what we have, and we need to do something with it. So I will go forward and support this, but I will want to monitor this and make sure that it's being done consistently.
Well, it's my job to monitor, and it's your job to hold me accountable for that monitoring.
And that will happen. Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I think this resolution is written as a fair compromise. Our alternative is to do nothing and maintain a double rates, which I definitely don't think is fair. And I still trying to figure out in my mind, we've got the communications from Mr. Fonda and Ms. Snyder's, and I'm still trying to figure out in my mind what the financial implications are of both proposals. But I want to go with what our management's recommending is the way I'm going to go with this.
And I'm sorry, I didn't state earlier, I will support Dan's amendment.
A quick question for Shane maybe, or Fonda. Are all metered lines coming in that are charged as a commercial rate 3/4 inch?
No.
Yeah, okay. I can support the initial. I'd be interested to see how we're going to go with me seconding Councilor Scamperly's amendment here as to what rate we'd be contemplating here. But really in the scheme of things, to eliminate the double billing and recognizing, and I don't want me to preach, I'm not preaching, but I know many people have heard me say it countless times. Our code needs a serious look at, and to go forward, this could be a fair compromise fix until we can get the staff back into code enforcement, get our city back to where we'd like it to be, not only financially, but from a law enforcement aspect, a public safety aspect, code aspect, assessment aspect, all of the above. Fonda's carrying a lot of weight with many of the management department heads here in the city, and to move this forward, I can support this.
Other comments or questions? I'll weigh in on the proposed amendment first with regards to the rate. Now, at the last meeting, I was supportive of the concept of what I call the 50-50 proposal offered, suggested to us by the Snyders. But since the meeting, again, reviewing the notes and the one question I asked about whether or not it was possible to have more than one commercial or office unit in a residence. I think that's possible. And if it is possible, although it might be rare, then a 50-50 split doesn't work with, two businesses and a residence or whatever. Whereas the language proposed here would address that type of situation in terms of metering. And to answer Councilor Silly's question, in part, I think, if management's proposal was approved, then for those residences currently paying a family residence only that might become subject to this, the additional expense is $6 a week. So, I'll state my intent, and with regards to the language of the amendment, I don't think we can accept that when we're trying to amend an ordinance. I think if that's the direction council wants to go, then we need to get the appropriate language, to reflect that desire. Any other discussion on the amended resolution?
So my thought process in listening to you, Mayor, is that we're trying to make this pigeonhole into something that is rare, a rare entity of having two home businesses or something like that. Why couldn't we go with the amendment with Dan for that? And if it has more than one commercial unit, then it goes to the full metered rate.
Then that would be something we would need to address in this amendment to the resolution.
But it's so
which
rare.
We're not addressing.
I know we're not, but I'm looking for a compromise with this, and I'm looking for something that would address the uniform and address what the common use is for most people.
Do you have suggested language?
I would piggyback off Dan's amendment and then just add a caveat that would say if more than one commercial entity is at the location, they will be billed at the basic commercial rate.
Are you making it in the form?
I'll make that in the form of an amendment, a friendly amendment to Dan's.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the second amendment?
Representing management, I really would need some clarification on that. I'm not so sure I completely understand that. And what if there were to be a third business in there, right? We can take this to the nth degree.
So to try to interpret what Councilor Stevenson suggested. So you have a residence with a daycare center and an office that is not related to the daycare center. So in effect, two businesses and a residence.
An office with customers.
Yes. So as I'm understanding what Councilor Stevens is proposing, that residence would be billed the 50-50 rate plus 100% commercial rate. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm
She's
saying.
saying, I believe she's saying that it would be both entities would be at full metered rate.
Correct. Because it's more. So it's more. So if we do the midway point, as Dan suggested, if we have one single home business plus the one residence, we do that. If they have more than one home business, then they would go to.
What management's proposing here.
Correct.
That's the way I understood it.
Okay, I understand what you're suggesting now. I still question that this is appropriate language for amending the resolution.
I have to agree with you with that, Mayor. Just simply based off, let's say you have two different titles of businesses in one dwelling, and it's a residence. You've got a residence, a hair salon, a chair in there for a hair salon, and a potential gift shop under another name. Right?
Mhm.
And you're gonna want to hit them with, or not hit them, but you're gonna want to tax them at the full meter rate.
As proposed here, yes. So the person that just has the one small business is gonna pay less. The person that has more than one.
Are we really addressing the actual issue that the Snyders brought forward in the beginning?
Yes, we are.
I think we are.
I don't see 3 businesses in a dwelling.
I don't
but-
either.
but, You know, listen,
We're gonna
you
have-
know, we don't even have a list of businesses. You know, at the end of the day, we don't have, we have somewhat of an analysis. We had a system crash that prevented us from getting certain information. And, you know, with that, we're looking to soften the blow a little bit in the grand scheme of things here with the original resolution that came in our packet today. And, you know, I mean, you know, we could, like the city manager said, we could take this to the 10th degree, and that's not fair for anybody looking to potentially open a business. If we're going to, the whole reason we're here is because of the issue that the Snyders brought forward. And I'm not looking to create or add. I can't, I won't.
So
No,
we,
I don't support that.
we still have codes that limit.
We don't have any code for it.
We still have, that's a separate issue. We still have code that doesn't allow certain businesses to be at-home businesses in residential areas. So that's why I say, I know your concern, Mayor, but that's such a small percentage of them that we're trying to fix with this initial that affects the most amount of people. And I like the proposal the Snyders brought forward. That I was very happy with. So that's why I would support Dan's resolution. I'm still concerned about the regulation of it with the vague terms, but I will have faith in what Fonda's telling me. But I think that in order to just not to take and use this proposal, because there might be 2 places in the entire city that we don't know about that have 2 businesses. I like Dan's proposal if we're going to go with the vague terms.
Okay, any further discussion?
So do you want to pull your amendment, Jen, and then just leave it at mine?
I could do that. I'll rescind my motion.
Okay.
I don't know if
Okay, any further discussion?
You have to rescind your second.
I'll rescind the second then.
no, I just need it from the maker of the motion.
All right, so with regard to the amended motion, Kathy, would you read back what you have for language in it?
I knew you were going to do that.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I got it here.
And if staff has an idea for cleaner language, please, now's the time.
Okay, Counselor Scamperly made a motion to change the language instead of commercial metered fee midway point. I don't have all the words in here. Midway point between a residential flat fee and a minimum metered fee. And it was seconded by Counselor Powers.
Basically, what I'm looking at here is I think the Snyders proposed was instead of charging the commercial flat rate, metered flat rate, we're charging halfway between the residential flat rate and the commercial. So the way I have it written, the midway point or charge between the residential flat rate and the commercial metered flat rate.
That is exactly what I have, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And it was seconded by Counselor Powers, and Counselor Stevenson has since withdrawn her
I have.
motion to amend.
Do you want to clean that up?
No, what I do want to point out is there are multiple meter rates depending on the size of the line coming in. So there are going to be multiple numbers there
Okay.
if council were to move forward, right? The midpoint is different given the
Different size.
different sizes. of
Okay.
different costs coming in.
Fair enough. Definitely. That's a good point.
So there isn't just going to be one number, there are going to be several.
All right, any further discussion? All right, so we're voting on the amendment to the resolution. Is that correct, Kathy?
We are voting to amend.
To amend the original resolution.
Yes, sir. Are we
Please-
ready, Mayor?
Please call the roll.
Counselor Selly,
No,
Counselor Powers?
No.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
No.
Approved.
All right, so now, any further discussion on the resolution as amended? I would just offer at this point my comments with regards to the language, which I think is consistent with many on council, that it is an improvement over what we currently have. It may not be perfect, and it may not be, where we might get to with further discussion, but I think getting an improvement at this time is important. And we have to have confidence in our administration in administering the intent of the definition that is being revised here. That's my viewpoint.
And I just want to say I agree, and had my amendment got shot down, I still would have voted for this because I see it as an improvement. But I wanted to take it a step further.
Understood.
The original amendment would call for $6 more, right? You said?
Yeah, so
What
$3 a week.
half?
Yeah. Based on the proposed new rates. Any further discussion? Right, so Kathy, can we take a roll on the resolution as amended?
As amended, yes, sir. Counselor Powers?
I'm sorry, I thought we voted on that.
No. we
You voted to
approve
amend.
the amendment. Now we have to vote on the resolution as
No.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
amended. Yes.
Counselor Silly?
Yes.
Approved.
All right, our next item of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronus.
Okay, a resolution to adopt the 2025 preliminary budget as amended. You'll see on the second page the list of amendments we've discussed at the third workshop. I would like to point out the third amendment has a typo in it. In referring to the account number, it says AA General Fund 3140.460. That line should be AA 3410.460. My apologies. I just transposed the two numbers.
640, I'm sorry?
It's 3410,460.
The one and the four were just
The
transposed.
third bullet.
Yeah.
Would someone care to introduce this?
I'll move that.
Okay. All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. I do apologize. I was not here at the last budget session. I had planned on being here the evening of the power outage and was away for business. I have listened to the budget session. I have listened to it multiple times, but there are some areas that were really not very easy to hear or understand. So I would just ask that perhaps I could have a recap of the discussion on the code office and what exactly was discussed there as far as we are actually leaving the extra code officer in the budget. Is that my understanding?
What we're doing is leaving that appropriation in there. When the budget was originally formulated, we did not have the resignation letter from one of the code enforcement officers. As such, now we have that information. What I shared with council was we would need to replace that individual who's left, bringing the current number of 2 back up to 2. And the goal would be to leave the appropriation dollars that we had for a quote third code enforcement officer, which was a succession position, right, a training position for assuming a retirement in the near future. It just came sooner than we thought. Potentially to utilize those funds either for additional support personnel wise, but perhaps for some software.
The camera on
that we're going to demo in
AI.
the next couple of weeks that could very well make that office significantly more efficient. The demo I saw was great. That doesn't mean it's going to fit. I'm one person with maybe not the most code knowledge, but we're going to have the department heads and the code enforcement officers take a look at that in a couple of weeks and get their feedback, and we may move forward on that. We do need to give that office additional capacity by leaving those funds in the contingency account where they landed right now. That gives us some flexibility moving forward.
Thank you. And then I had listened to the area. Most of it I am right in line with, and I do think it was a great budget presentation. It was very easy to follow. I really enjoyed it. I've been involved in a number of budgets, and I agree it's one of the best presentations we've had and some of the best discussion, but a lot of the hard work was done before we even got the budget, and I appreciate that. But I would really, I need to see that extra officer in the budget. That is something that's very important to me. When I look at our police department and the strain that they've been under, the work they try to do, I'm worried about the safety of our officers. I'm worried about the safety of our citizens when they can't respond in a timely manner to back each other up. And this was before the presentation by Sergeant Polniak. This has been my concern for quite some time, and it was over the last 4 years, and then this last time that I've been on council. I really need to see that other officer back in the budget somehow. However it needs to be done, whether it takes them back from there, take it some of the contingency funds that we have here. I really need, for safety's sake and for morale's sake, and just for our citizens, to have that position put back in the budget.
If I thought the city could afford to put another officer in, it would have been in the preliminary budget.
Mhm.
Recall that $500,000 of revenue comes in to fund police officers that we utilize in our operations. And that's a problem. That makes that department, first of all, the entire budget is not structurally balanced, right? You're using fund balance to cover the corners. So that's issue number one, just from a budget nerd standpoint, which is very important at this moment in time. That department in particular, through no fault of any officer, that is not structurally balanced either, because we are not paying for a good portion of those personnel officers through our regular means, which is sales tax, any other revenues that come in, and the property tax. We're utilizing outside contracts to do that. That is extremely problematic for me. And to be able to add another officer in that fiscal circumstance is not anything that I can justify doing. If council wants to do it, I point them to the budget, and I would say make $90,000 in cuts right now, and we'll go ahead and try and squeeze another officer in. But to do it without having to feel the pain in other areas, and it still does not solve the problem with the fact that that department is not structurally balanced. The money that's coming in comes from outside sources that may or may not continue. As your budget guy, I have to make that an extreme point to make. If I could have squeezed one in, I would have.
And I did, I listened to the comments, but we do have a 3-year contract with the school system. And with a few of the incidents that have happened with our officers at the school, I can't see that going anywhere anytime soon. If anything, schools are adding more more security to their schools, not less. So I can't see that going away. And I heard the comments about peace officers at the airports. I really, at this point with the legislature, I don't see that changing either. So I think that those are, while we need to be mindful of them, I don't think that they are likely to go away. So I really want to see that second officer added. And if other counselors are in favor of trying to add that to our budget, then I would be happy to go over the budget or take recommendations from you as to where we could come up with those funds. I'm very concerned because I've seen this before when I've been on council. It takes a while to get an officer up and running. So we're in an environment where we have low morale and overworked officers with lots of overtime that they don't want anymore. They want to have a life. They want to have rest. And they're leaving. They're leaving to go to other entities. So we're losing trained officers over time, and that's adding to our overtime issues. So I'm concerned with that. If we lose an officer because they see us only adding one when they had hoped that we were going to give them relief with 2, and safety, not just relief, safety with 2, then by the time they have an academy at SUNY Canton in March, that officer wouldn't even be hitting the ground, and if I do this correctly, till midsummer. And if we wait, and then there's one in Potsdam in late summer, August, I think, then we're delaying that. These staffings aren't even going to take really effect until 2026. So it's the timing of it is important that we bring them in now, because then we're gonna be back to where we were before, still short-staffed, like we are with our fire department right now.
Nothing that you say is incorrect. This city cannot afford another officer. It's already predicting in this budget, $450,000 loss in its general fund alone, let alone the sewer fund, which is predicted to be another $150,000 in deficit. If you could afford it, I would have squeezed it in already. I don't believe you can afford another officer, and it pains me to say it. Everything that you say is correct. But we are adding one officer in a circumstance where you're gonna run a deficit next year, and this budget adds another officer. I think that's what you can afford this year. We'll retool next year. If we can squeeze another one in, I think it becomes priority number one, just like Kathy's deputy was priority number one this year. I mean, it comes down to what position do you not want to fund? And I suppose it probably comes down to Kathy's deputy versus another officer. And even that is not weighed properly. You know, we'll bridge the gap for a few $1,000 difference.
No, I wouldn't, if I were looking at it, no, that wouldn't be where I would start. It would be with the code office. I would really like to have the software, but that would give us time to perhaps look at the software, validate it, see if it would even work with the equipment we have. I mean, we have issues right now with our whole technology within our building. So maybe that gives us time to vet that and see where we go with that and put that as priority number one in our next budget. But the officer is priority number one this year after Kathy's clerk. She can't continue to manage without having a deputy. We know that. Maybe I'm the only one that feels this way. I guess I'd like to hear from other counselors.
Just in follow-up to Jen's comment, is there an estimated cost of the software we're exploring?
Probably around $40,000.
So potentially upwards of 40% of the cost of a new officer, an additional officer.
Probably.
We'd have to come up another 50 somewhere else.
I think what you do is, if you were to take that, so what's in the budget right now is $75,000 for the code enforcement. So taking $40,000 out of that, you need another, that leaves you 35, you need 95 or so you need to find out what $60,000.
Well, why can't we take the entire 75 out of codes for that?
Well, I was answering the mayor's question. You can certainly take the 75 if that's your choice.
For the third
And
position.
then you probably need to go almost another 20. And then just the other issue that you should contemplate is the fact that over time, that position does grow salary-wise significantly. I think 33% over the course of the year. So it's a large financial burden, and that's why we wanted to, or at least I wanted to spread the over the course of some years.
And I do understand that, and I wish it was a perfect world, and I wish we were able to do everything that is better for the city, but I know there are citizens that, you know, they're trying to do their own monitoring of their own homes and their neighbors with neighborhood watches over cameras and people wandering through their backyards, and they're scared. People are scared, and I think that, and I would be scared to be a police officer if I can't get someone to come and back me up. That's why we can't attract somebody. We've sent out feelers to add for bonus if you wanted to transfer in. I don't think we had any results from that. I really think that it's a priority, and I would like to see if we could do something to try to make that happen.
Other counselors?
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Stevenson. It's a crisis they're in, and I'd like to see if we could. I know we're in tough times. If there's any way possible, I'd like to see it.
You know, I pushed for it hard last meeting. Everybody wants it. Problem is, where do we get the money? You know, and the codes was my suggestion in the beginning. And it's tough. And when you look at the fact that we're in that situation where we can't guarantee those jobs in the long run, it's difficult. It's a terrible situation to be in. And you know, like Fonda said, we're in our own boat here. We've got 5 positions paid for by other entities right now, right? And we know we're gonna lose county money. The federal money is probably not gonna be there, so we got the airport and the school. I agree with Jen, I think the school's gonna continue. But
And you did lose county money. There was one position that was funded through the VA, you did not get that funding this year. So effectively, we've had to fund two. It's not a negative two, but we've had to fund two out of local dollars.
What if we were to compromise and, because I'm worried about the time that we hire the officer by the time they're effective. What if we were to do 1.5 officers so that we hired one to go to the academy that would be ready to go to the academy at SUNY Canton, and then the next one in time to go to the academy at Potsdam. So we stagger it a little bit.
I think it solves part of your budget problem for this year, but it doesn't serve the long-term issue. And I don't know, I let the chief comment on whether that's possible. I don't know.
That's absolutely possible. I mean, we do have 2 academies. One starts in March, one starts in August. Just I'm sitting over here a little confused. I understand completely that we have 5 positions that are funded by other entities. But under that logic, we would essentially have to be 5 understaffed to be able to absorb those positions, following that same line of logic. We have healthy relationships with these entities, and we should foster and continue those healthy relationships moving forward. I guess I'm just not following that as your department head. But yeah, it's absolutely 100% possible to send someone to the August Academy.
Who starts in March? Canton start in March?
Canton starts in March.
Potsdam in August?
Yeah, usually Canton starts in January, but the board, which is the police chiefs and the sheriff, asked to push it back to March because we're always in a crunch because our test results come out late December usually, and you can't get with the new requirements in our background checks if we can't get them done in a week or 2. It's just impossible. We need like a full month at least, so that's why we pushed it back to March, so make sure we can get the proper hires.
Feel confident you'll get one in by March?
By March, hoping I can get 5 in. At least the 4 that are in the preliminary budget by March, yes. Yeah, our PT test is actually this Saturday, so we'll have a good number of candidates that we should know this Saturday, actually.
so under Jen's scenario, if we did that, the 1.5, we would shift codes money to fund the half officer to begin in August, which is midway through the year. Is that possible?
I mean, theoretically, it's possible. The question is the list gonna exist?
I hear you.
I know there's a lot
That's
of
another
people
question.
that are looking to hire a lot of.
That is a risk to take, is that, the sheriff is looking to hire 7. We're contemplating 4 or 5 at the moment. Messina's 2 or 3. So countywide, you're looking about 15 to 18 hires off of this list. The numbers look like they're there. Hopefully someone's still there mid-year. And this budget too is built on, you have to budget high. Everyone is budgeted at a family plan for health insurance. So, got to take that into consideration too. So your insurance can run from a $4,000 buyout to a $30,000 insurance plan. So you could have savings there, but you don't know that until someone's actually hired and you ask them, what do you want for insurance?
So the suggestion is, I don't want to call it a half a police officer.
I know.
It's a half a position.
Half a position.
A half, well, you fund 50%.
Those half positions are a position, from budgetary language. Sounds good when you say it, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's a body.
Starts midway this year and then.
So there'd be a hire, let's say in January, and a hire in July.
It's a compromise to make it work because as the city manager said, we were going to look to put that officer if possible, into the budget next year. So it's just 6 months earlier versus putting it off. And it'll still help with I have to imagine it would help with overtime.
No, most of these hires won't help with overtime. Academy's 6 months, and it's 3 to 4 months on their field training, or I say 3 to 4, because everyone learns at a different speed. So you're looking, literally November of 2025 before the March recruits are ready to hit the road.
But if we put it off a year, it's still going to be another year of
Correct.
not saving on overtime.
Correct.
So no matter what we do, we're kicking it down the road.
We had 2 retirees in 18 months.
Potentially.
Potentially.
I would desperately love to see us hire a second police officer, or even a third if we could. But we had these discussions during budget, even talked about raising the tax rate higher, where we could do. Unfortunately, I agree with the city manager's prioritization of what our needs are and where we're going to go. It's just like my budget at home. I have lots of things I'd like to have, but I have to look at my income and where it's coming from and what can I afford to do. I just don't think at this time we can afford that as second officer and maintain the tax rate and the budget that we're trying to accomplish as we try to stay under the constitutional tax limit and improve our position down the road. Don't get me wrong, I support the police department and I desperately love to do it, but I think we need to go with the budget that we've worked on for a month and pretty much agreed with what the priorities are.
But I'm sorry, but I have to take exception with that because I was not here to be able to express those opinions at this last meeting, and we hadn't really addressed them previous to that. And I would have expressed this the other evening. And I fully had planned on being here when we had the power outage to have this discussion. But if we weren't adding a code officer, if we were just replacing the one and keeping the department static as it was, I would understand where we're at. But it's kind of like, to me, if we want to talk about our home budget, it's kind of like adding a deck versus fixing the roof that's leaking on me currently, if we want to use that analogy. So I'm sorry, Donna, I spoke before you did. I apologize. No, I was oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were leaning forward. My apologies.
All I was gonna say is the goal next year is to cut another $117,000 off the levy. We have to keep the longer term in play as well. Just something that.
And reduce applied fund balance by what, 300,000?
Yeah.
That's the target.
We have to become structurally balanced before we can really attack our problems. And if you, from the code enforcement issue, we're going to lack capacity, right? New code enforcement officer there. So the productivity from that office is likely to go down as opposed to stay the same or go up until that person's onboarded in a proper way. I think my opinion is, as much as I wish we could afford another one, we have to spread our resources in the most effective way. And the most complaints I get is from code issues. And I think that's something that we have to address. That's why that's in there.
All right, so before suggesting any amendments to the resolution, let's just do a poll of the council to see if there are at least 4 councilors in support of the suggestion of bringing on an additional police officer in July. No.
I agree with Jen. Yes.
Yes.
I've always been in support of it. And if can I comment?
Sure.
As I mentioned in our last budget session, Fonda did a great job outlining this budget. The last 4 years prior to that, I didn't see anything remotely that described everything the way it does now and what we're looking to do to, one, get us within the constitutional tax limit, 2, to build some coffers, which are really small in reality. Contingency monies for future outlying issues such as additional police. I've always supported the police. I was never opposed. I was never I never appreciated the way the previous administrations went about the way they did their business. I said, but what, you know, what's done is done. The damage is done there. And now we're trying to rebuild. I fully support the police. I fully support fire. I support all aspects. We just passed a resolution and we're going to nip the codes when we need a new code. We need to have our code and we're going to lose a position. We just passed a resolution that supports additional code enforcement. I do hear a lot about code enforcement. I do support the police. I wanted another police officer. We talked at length at the last budget session about it. And I mean, we'd have to take from some contingencies. We'd have to probably pull from the code enforcement. And I'm reluctant to do that at this time because of the simple fact that we don't have any to begin with. But public safety is a priority for the citizens. So it's a tough spot to be in. And I'd like to see us, but what's that going to look like at the end of the day? Where are we getting it? What's it going to affect? What office is it going to affect going forward?
But Councilor Powers, we still have 2 code officers. We're
losing one.
We are losing one, but we're going to replace that one. It's a 3rd one that we're taking the money from.
And
It's
that's the succession rule. That's the one for succession.
No, we're still going to hire the 1 code officer to replace the one that's leaving. Am I understanding that correct? This would be a 3rd one that we would be hiring,
Well,
or a 3rd money to be allowed.
the plan was to leave those dollars kind of in our minds
Appropriated.
appropriated codes to be able to add capacity. to the
Right.
office.
But more than 2. Or
It would be,
electronic, or
what my hope would
technology.
be is 2 plus the software, which would make their lives more efficient so that we could actually do more in that office. That's kind of, so adding a police officer to help them and try and put a finger in the dam there, and maybe putting another finger in
Remind me of that number, that appropriation for code.
$75,000.
on top of the 2 positions that are already funded in the budget. Yes.
Do we have an applicant for this position?
I have 2.
Yes.
All right, so since a majority of council is supportive of a July 1 hire, what would be your recommendation to us? Let's say as options, either reduction in contingency by 50,000 or reduction in code enforcement by 50,000 or some combination?
Well, the easiest way to do it is to take the 75,000 out of the contingency that's allocated to codes and put it in the 3120.110 line. There's still then it's the $20,000 question where you come up with the $20,000.
But we wouldn't need 95,000 if it's just a half-year position.
Yeah, that's a problem.
We only need 50,000. And so again, and I'd like to want, what would be your recommendation to us? Pull it from contingency, pull it from code enforcement, or some combination?
I would pull it. See, that would be the best. Then see where we're at.
And then perhaps depending on the experience of the applicants we have, we might only still need the 2 code officers, and we might be able to still get software if it were priced properly to lighten the load.
No, I would say you're not going to focus on it, sure.
Okay, well, you said take it from contingency, leave the 75 there. That's what I was wondering.
No,
Okay.
I said take whatever you've got, take it out and see whatever you think.
Okay.
And that's not anything we need to do right this moment in time. We can do it now or we can, but there's no way that the city can afford to do both. I would never understand.
All right, thank you.
All right, so based on the desires of council, I would,
Mayor, if I may, you may still have an option to do both. You can obviously come back to the budget, but we would know from our hires on their insurance choice in March. All it takes is 2 candidates to take a buyout, and you're going to save $60,000. I don't know how much your software is, but and then we could fund that officer.
right, so, I mean, that can be a
Out of our own
decision that
budget.
management makes once we know the facts, but all we need right now is $50,000.
Sure.
So again, based on the direction of council, based on the conversation, I'll make the motion to amend this resolution to reduce the contingency budget in the general fund by $50,000 and to add $50,000 to the appropriate budget lines in the police budget to hire a second officer, with the intention to hire a second officer in 2025.
Mid-year.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it'll be part of next year's budget, so.
just so the amendment is reduce contingency by $50,000, increase the police budget by $50,000 and adjust the appropriate codes accordingly.
All right, so the contingency line is A.199498. An increase, that will be reduced by $50,000. The increase to 3120.110 plus $50,000.
I'm sorry, 3120 what?
110.
And then if we need to do budget transfers accordingly, because I mean, this isn't covering the fringe benefits, so. Yeah, we may make other adjustments, but I'm comfortable with this.
I'll second your amendment.
All right, any further discussion?
I'm still concerned with the cost of this position 2-3 years down the road. And I don't see any drastic increases in our revenue coming in over that period of time, but we're trying to work out of a problem that's been created and do it in a responsible manner. And again, as much as I'd like to see a second officer, I just don't see the funding there, not only this year, but in 2006, 2007, 2008. You know, there's a drastic increase in salaries coming up with us also. Just my 2 cents.
Any other discussion? Kathy, would call the roll, please, on the amendment?
To amend, yes, sir. Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Silly?
No,
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Approved.
All
And
right,
now, as amended, Mayor?
no, not yet. Any other discussion on the resolution as amended? I would just point out for the public that the adjustments to preliminary budget noted in the resolution were a result of discussions that we had at the last budget workshop, where management came to us. They went back and analyzed the anticipated costs in the heat, light, and power budgets throughout the budget, and came to a determination that the overall expense in the general fund could be reduced by $50,000 in those lines, in 32,000 in FX, is that water, sewer? Water, thanks. And 20,000 in the sewer fund. So that was after we requested a recommendation from the city manager as to where to move those monies, and he suggested contingency, and we all supported that. So I just wanted to make that comment. Any other discussion? All right, Kathy, if we could vote on the resolution as amended.
Yes, sir. Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim? Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Silly?
yes,
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Approved.
And again, just to echo comments that we've made at the budget hearings and as well tonight, but just great appreciation to the city manager and the department heads for the work that was done in developing this budget proposal that was presented to council. The thoroughness is very much appreciated. I don't know, and I haven't paid that close attention over the years, but I don't know that there's been a budget that came before the city council in recent years that saw so few changes from what was the proposal presented by management. It's just very impressive. So thank you, all of you.
Very much. Yeah, very much. The hours and hours.
And again, as mayor, I'll say this, my appreciation to council too. The recommendation was the city manager that as we looked at the budget, we looked at it in terms of, global impacts, not get into nitty gritty in the weeds of line by line stuff. And we did that. So I'm sure there's some appreciation to council for that as well. All right, the next item of business will be read by Controller Angela Gray.
Good evening. This is a local law for changes in the Ogdensburg Municipal Code, Section 177, entitled Sewer Rates, as dictated by the adoption of the 2025 budget.
Someone care to
Move
introduce
that.
this? Second. Any discussion? This reflects a 4% increase in rates, is that correct?
That is accurate, yes.
Okay, and this was reviewed at budget workshop number 3 last week. Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Silly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Approved.
And our next item of business will be read by City Controller Angela Gray.
This is a local law to allow for changes in the Ogdensburg Municipal Code, Section 215, Sections 39, 40, and 41, entitled Water Rates, as dictated by the adoption of the 2025 budget.
Someone care to introduce this?
I'll make the motion. Sorry.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Again, rates reflect a 4% increase.
That is accurate, yes.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Silly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim? Approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronis.
A resolution calling for a public hearing and public notice on a proposed ordinance to lease municipal property at 330 4th Street basement for a satellite office for U.S. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik.
Move that.
Second. Any discussion?
I'm giving warning that I vote yes for the public hearing, but very likely to vote no on the proposition itself.
She's recently been nominated for the ambassador for the UN to president-elect.
That is correct. I did contact this office this morning, and they tell me it's business as usual at the moment.
Let's get
Somebody's gonna have to convince me that there's a benefit to leasing an office to a woman who's never visited Ogdensburg and will not even meet with her own constituents and anything less than a controlled environment.
I've personally escorted Congresswoman Elise Stefanik around the city of Ogdensburg on a couple of occasions.
So have I. I'll fact check.
She attended when Ogdensburg was targeted for closure. She attended a small rally we had at the public library.
I walked her up and down River Street, around the Hosmer project, around the new hotel project. We had some street issues. We had a lot of things going on, and that was just one occasion. She's been here, personally met with her in the city on a few occasions.
And outside of even her attending, at times, her staff have been readily available for
Right.
conversations
Always.
and meetings here in town.
$12,000 for the year.
And if there's a transition and it's business as usual right now, chances are whoever the next congressperson is will probably keep the office rolling. And it's nice to have a congressperson in office, in-house, or a contact. So we've done this as much as we could, try to keep our federal or state entities close.
Any further discussion? Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Silly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim? Yes. Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Approved.
I'll introduce the next resolution, which is to appoint the 2025 City of Ogdensburg Charter Review Commission members. Whereas the duty of the Charter Review Commission is to review the Ogdensburg City Charter in its entirety and make recommendations to the City Council. And whereas pursuant to section C100 of the Augsburg City Charter, the mayor and city council shall either appoint a charter review commission or place on the ballot the election of a charter review commission no later than December 31st, 2027. And whereas the Augsburg City Charter must be reviewed immediately following each 10-year period thereafter. And whereas the charter was last reviewed in 2017, now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and city council, having reviewed the submitted list of candidates for the Augsburg Charter Review Commission, appoint the following to the Charter Review Commission: Michael Brashaw, Wendy Hamilton, Connie Jenkins, James LaFave, Doug Loeffler, James McCarthy, James Morrison, Cindy O'Grady, Angela Rufa, Kyle Sharp, Dallas Sutton, John Wilson. I so move.
Second.
Any discussion?
I think that it's just wonderful that we actually had more people that wanted to participate than we had slots for them. And I thank everyone that stepped up and offered to serve, as I know you will, Mayor.
Yes. Yeah, I will just echo Councilor Stevenson's remarks. You know, it's certainly welcoming to see that, you know, we had as many applicants that submitted their application of interest. You know, so we had to, you know, make some decisions based on the information shared with us and our knowledge of these candidates. So again, thanks to all who applied. And just reminder that the first meeting of the 2025 Charter Review Commission is scheduled Wednesday, January 8th at 6 o'clock here at City Hall. With that, Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
approved.
And I will introduce the next resolution in support of continued and increased state aid for local governments.
Second.
Discussion. To summarize the language in the resolution, City of Augsburg receives municipal aid from New York State, and for 15 years, the dollar amount of that aid did not change. No inflationary increase for any municipality in the state. In an effort to address that, in 2024, in adopting the budget, the legislature approved a $50 million increase in unrestricted state aid, treating it as an ad hoc increase for the year 2024. And so what this resolution is a support from the city of Ogdensburg to ask the governor and state legislature, when they're preparing the 2025-26 state budget, to commit to continuing at least this additional $50 million in unrestricted state aid. And through lobbying efforts led by the New York Conference of Mayors, hopefully this could be worked into the actual aid formula, as well as some provision for an annual inflationary increase. So that's the intent of this, and this resolution, if adopted, will be shared with the governor, Senate Majority Leader, Assembly Speaker, and our local representatives. Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
approved.
And that brings us to old business. Does anyone have any old business this evening? Hearing none brings us to new business. Does anyone have any new business this evening? That brings us to items for discussion. Does anyone have any items for discussion? I would ask the city manager to make some brief comments in response from the city's perspective to the letter from Mr. Barr that was read tonight.
Sure. The issue that Mr. Barr has gone through, although I feel for him, is not a city issue per se, okay? The property is not in the city, and the city does not own the line that goes across this property. That's a Village of Hewlett issue. There are, however, city interests involved in the proper maintenance and proper workings of that line. So I've had conversations with the village people, and in particular the mayor. She recognizes this is a problem. She recognizes that because the city has an interest in this circumstance and everything working really as one unit, that we put in some new protocols on communication, so that if an incident like this, and we hope it doesn't, but if it does happen again, the city will be contacted and we will know as much detail as we can have at that moment in time and continue conversations as circumstances warranted. This is an unfortunate incident without any question. And it did expose a weakness in the overall processes, and that seems to be corrected given the conversations I've had with the mayor.
Thank you, Fonda. Any other comments or questions? All right, that brings us to citizen participation. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you will have 2 minutes.
Good evening, Tanya Snyder. Thank you for amending the dollar amount on home businesses are going to have to pay for water and sewer rates in the future. We do appreciate it. But now we have gotten to the next point. Do we know when code enforcement is going to be sending out the letters to home businesses that have been previously identified by city staff? That this was the second step to the presentation that was presented on 9/23/24. If the next step is not done, then we are still going to be the only few people paying for double water, paying water. Oh my God, let me start over again. If the next step is not done, then we are still going to be the only one of a few people paying the additional water rates for home businesses. The main issue in the last 9 months has been whether or not this is enforceable. Is code enforcement going to be able to get this done? Now that we are going to be down to 1 officer soon, are we going to be able to enforce it across the city on a continual basis to make it, as you said, as fair as it can possibly we can get it? We would like to know if the public could get an update on the next city council meeting as to what the code enforcement has done since this meeting, and as far as the identifying the home businesses and enforcing the code. A copy of this statement is being given to the clerk for to be included in the minutes. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raise hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute 1 person at a time, and you will have 2 minutes.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
All right, with that, we have a resolution to adjourn to executive session. Whereas City Manager Fonda Cronus requests an executive session with members of the Augsburg City Council to discuss matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. And whereas New York State Open Meetings Law permits City Council to adjourn to executive session for such purpose, now therefore be it resolved that City Council adjourn to executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Be it further resolved that any action resulting from this executive session shall be taken in open session. I so move.
Second.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Schinkin.
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson.
Yes.
Counselor Trim.
Yes.
Counselor Weaver.
Yes.
Mayor Tulley.
Yes.
Counselor Selly.
Yes.
Counselor Powers.
Yes.
Approved.
And we do not anticipate any action, so I will make a motion to adjourn from executive session. Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned after executive session.